SVC Media.
Welcome to the iGaming Daily Podcast, analysing the news from the betting and gaming industry all over the globe, supported by Optimove, the #1 CRM marketing solution for the iGaming market.
One of the most talked about topics in the US gambling sector throughout 2025 has been the increased popularity of sweepstakes. And if you've listened to this show throughout the year, you'll certainly heard us dissect the latest ongoings on this vertical on many an occasion. But how can operators take advantage of sweepstakes and ensure that there is a sustainable and long-term growth in the sector with player engagement? Welcome back to iGaming Daily, supported by Optimove, the creator of positionless marketing and the #1 player engagement platform. Are you heading to G2E? Optimove is hosting an exclusive sweepstake industry breakfast. Get market insights and hear from the top names in the industry. Find out more on this can't-miss event in the description of this episode. And joining me, Charlie Horner, for this one to talk all things sweepstakes is Jeff Laniado, Director of Sales at Optimove. Jeff, thanks for joining us on the show. I'm looking forward to this breakfast. I must admit, I won't be there, but I wish I was.
Yeah, thanks for having me back. It should be fun. Breakfast is famously my favorite meal of the day, so I think it should be a good time with some good content and hopefully some good omelets. Excellent.
Yeah, that's what we like to hear. Look, Jeff, the last time we spoke on the show, we were talking about the NFL, and I remember at the time you were very optimistic about the Jets' start to the season. Now a few weeks into the campaign, do you still have the same hopes?
Was I optimistic? I don't. It doesn't sound like me. I don't know if I was, but no, they're 0-3. The Giants also are 0-3, so it's become a little bit of a running joke locally here of who's going to win their first game. Both futures look pretty bleak. I've now kind of evolved to the point in the NFL season where I'm watching the games more for just watching them and being a fan of the sport, and have started to abandon hope of any Jets playoff run incoming. But yeah, it's still fun.
No, good stuff. Okay, let's have a dive into sweepstakes, because they're increasingly being viewed as a growth market in the US. How can operators focus on retention then to ensure that there is a long-term sector moving forward?
Yeah, obviously growth has been the biggest talking point around sweepstakes. We've published some data around how quickly some of these operators have grown month over month, year over year. And growth is the sexy metric. It's the sexy KPI that I'm sure a lot of these operators are focused on. And if they're raising money and they're talking to investors, it's the numbers that investors want to see. They want to see that top line revenue growth. But we're seeing more of a shift into retention and just more, fundamentally sound business metrics. Obviously from our standpoint at Optimove, we're in the world of retention and CRM, and growth is great. We want to get customers in the door. We need to acquire new players, but having that really strong CRM foundation in place really creates those long tail, high lifetime value players, which help create a sustainable business. And, more and more over the last 12 months, I would say we have brought on a ton of operators that are putting a really strong CRM foundation in place even before they launch, even before they have their first customer. And it's funny because, I've been doing this for 6 years and have talked to, I'm sure, hundreds of different companies, different operators. And when somebody hasn't launched yet or they're pre-revenue and the product isn't live, oftentimes they'll say to us, well, why do I need a CRM if I don't even have any players? I don't have a database to market to. But having a really strong foundation in place for when you get that first customer, for when you make that first dollar and that first customer walks in the door, that really just helps set the tone for how do we make sure that every dollar that we're putting into customer acquisition, we are hopefully getting the maximum return on investment by retaining them and maximizing their lifetime value and having that really strong retention flow in place. So I think there is a little bit of a shift from this growth at all costs to a more strategic focus on retention, and it's great to see.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. I think that's probably going to continue to be the case as the sector looks to increase profitability and get a return on those initial investments. I think it's really interesting that you say that, you're trying to focus on retention immediately after acquiring that player. So it's really important that during that first 24 hours of that player's journey, that they have a good experience to start that retention process straight away. Why is that so important, and why is the opening gambit such a powerful play?
So I was on another podcast earlier this week, actually, and I used the analogy of the first 48, which I learned is not a show that is in the UK, but an American show. I've never seen it, but the concept is a detective crime show, reality TV, where I suppose data shows that within the first 48 hours of a crime being committed, the likelihood of solving the case is dramatically higher if they either make an arrest or identify a suspect in those first 2 days. And it's this kind of critical period of time where after those first 48 hours, the likelihood drops off dramatically. And, it's a little bit odd to make a comparison to, murder and iGaming retention, but the data and the concept is the same. And we have a ton of data out there around how pivotal that first period of time is when a new customer registers and when they come in the door. And the vast majority of active customers make their first purchase in the world of sweeps. They make that first real money purchase within hours of registering. And if they don't convert in those first few hours, the likelihood of them being an active customer long-term drops off a cliff. And so we have this really critical period, and that's why we focus so much on investing in a strong welcome journey and, getting a really deep understanding of who that player is when they come in the door, and tracking behavior and activity, and trying to really act on that first impression, because, it's attention is fleeting. When a new customer registers and we see them for the first time, obviously something caught their attention and brought them to the site and had them, register with us. And we need to capitalize on that opportunity. Sweepstakes, gaming in general is very competitive, and sweepstakes especially has gotten intensely competitive with hundreds of operators. There are hundreds of online social sweepstakes casinos out there that players can go to any one of. And making sure that when we have their attention, when we do see them, we're acting appropriately, quickly, effectively. And, in general, we're vying for customers' attention, not only in the realm of social sweepstakes casinos, but also just in the realm of their attention. And I can't tell you how many times in a given day, really, like I pick up my phone and I go to do something, and then I get distracted by, I go to, check a stock price or something, and then I get a notification from DoorDash or the ESPN app, and then I have this feeling, which I feel like we need to create a word for, of like, what was I doing on my phone again? And I'm constantly just losing attention in a given span, and this is just competitive across all apps and all areas of life. So we're competing for customers' attention, not just to stand out among other social sweepstakes casinos, but we're competing against all the other distractions and all the other apps and everything else that a customer can divert their attention to. So when we do have that fleeting moment of a customer registers, they're on our site, we need to really act quickly and effectively.
Yeah, we really are in that attention economy at the moment, and there's a huge battle on for everyone's attention. So we've established that the first 24 hours of that player journey, is really, really crucial to building retention right from the start. And that includes having a really good welcome, and that process has to be really strong. So how can operators and sweepstakes operators in particular create that strong opening player journey to ensure that there is that solid foundation?
Yeah, there's a few different aspects to it, I would say. One is really getting that deep understanding of who the customer is. And we oftentimes can make predictions about players before they even make their first purchase or play their first game, right? If you think about the source that a player comes from, whether it's a specific affiliate or a specific influencer, when we know that a customer is coming from a specific source, and maybe that source is of higher value, or they have certain affinities towards certain games, we can use that data to tailor content and tailor messaging to them. So if we have an affiliate or an influencer that's driving traffic and driving customers that are solely focused on or overwhelmingly focused on slots, let's say, and maybe even a specific type of slot, we should have initial content and welcome journeys that are focused on slots. And if that source is driving high value players, maybe our treatment and our generosity strategy and the way that we bonus players should be more generous, because we know that that source can produce higher value players. Now, all of this has happened before that customer has even given us any data. But once they start to show tendencies and have different activities and behaviors, that's where operators can really harness that data to tailor the content, and even within the confines of a welcome journey. And if you think about, I guess a basic welcome journey, and I think everybody understands the concept of a welcome journey, and we rarely have to explain the importance of a welcome journey to an operator. I think everybody gets it. But the old school way of doing a welcome journey has always been this static, linear, predetermined flow where day 1, the customer gets this, and then day 3, they get this, and day 4, they get this, and day 7, they get this. And ultimately, the flaw with that is we're trying to anticipate what a customer is going to do over the first 7 days, over the first 10 days, and prescribe the messaging that's going to go to them without any agility and any idea of what the customer is going to do over that period of time, right? We're putting them into this static flow and then predetermining the messaging that they're going to get on day 7, regardless of what happens in that first week. But the reality is that, Charlie, if me and you come in the door and convert on the same day, and we're put into this same static welcome journey, but on day 1, I lose all of my coins and don't log in again for 4 days, but you have a great experience and win and refer to friends and have all these different behavioral tendencies that you're displaying. On day 4, we should probably be communicated to in completely different ways. And that's kind of the difference between a really basic welcome journey where we're doing this one size fits all, everybody's treated the same, or evolving to this more dynamic welcome journey where we're accounting for the nuances in each player, adapting what messaging should go based on where they're at. And, the example that I would use is, we're trying to kind of have a conversation with a player with earplugs in, right? We're not hearing what they're telling us. We're plotting them on this path and then letting them go without getting any feedback from them along the way of where we should guide them and how we should communicate with them over that period of time.
Mm-hmm. Fantastic. Well, that's really shown, how crucial that opening couple of hours, never mind days, is in terms of creating that retention. Jeff, we'll take a short break and then we'll come back and discuss this a little bit more.
SBC Leaders connects the gambling industry's top-tier operators and associations to share the best ideas, collaborate on solving the biggest issues, and push innovation throughout the betting and gaming industry. If you're an operator and want to join the discussion, visit sbcleaders.com for more information.
Welcome back to iGaming Daily. Today we're talking all about sweepstakes with Optimove's Director of Sales, Jeff Laniado. Jeff, before the break, we talked about how important the first 24 hours is to, in the player journey, maybe how that player journey is personalized in the first few days. Let's move on to the long term now. So how can operators, particularly in the sweepstakes sector, sustain engagement over the long term?
So you may have learned this already, but I like to use a lot of analogies and examples, and I like to use the analogy of dating within the world of CRM. And the operators that are overly focused on acquisition and just getting customers in the door without this focus on retention and CRM, I kind of use that comparison to a one-night stand. And what we want to do is we want to create these long-lasting relationships with our players. And so to do that, there's a couple different strategies to this, right? We want to identify who that player is, use all the intelligence that they're giving us to cater content to them, whether it's the right bonus amount, the right type of content, reaching them on the right channel that they prefer, but also identifying, certain milestones. Hey, this is the 10th game you've played. Hey, this is the 3rd customer that you've referred. This is your 1-year anniversary with the brand, right? These are milestones that are personalized and tailored to the player. They don't necessarily need to rely on any sort of promo or generosity that we have to give players, but it just shows this relationship that we're building with the customer, and hopefully we're building their affinity for the brand as well. The other aspect of engagement really is gamification. And that's an area that at Optimove we've invested a lot in over the last year. And making sure that we're not just pushing slot content. We're not just pushing table games, right? We can create mini games, or we can create surveys, or all these little types of experiences that are helping to build engagement. They're increasing the time on site. They're maybe creating some sort of loyalty or mission or leaderboard that's building up the loyalty of the customer to the brand without necessarily needing to just give them bonus dollars, which I think, bonus dollars, if I'm going back to the dating analogy, it can create a codependent relationship, right? We don't want to have a situation where players are just leaning on us for bonuses. They're coming to expect it. We want them to enjoy the product. We want them to enjoy the gamification elements and build up that loyalty to the brand in a really genuine way, because that's what will create high value, long-term customers.
Mm-hmm. Brilliant. I think that might be your best analogy of the lot, Jeff. Brilliant. And just finally, really, how do you view the long-term prospects of the sweepstakes sector? Because I mentioned it at the top of the show. It's something that we've been talking about on the podcast for it feels like all year now. It's a really interesting way the sector has developed. And how do you see that, just across the long term, and how will it develop over time?
Yeah, if I had $1 for every time somebody asked me this, I think I'd be at VGW level. But no, I mean, I'll share my thoughts and my opinion. I don't think this is necessarily reflective of any type of official, any Optimove official forecast of the industry. But, we're already starting to see some regulatory shifts. Obviously, there's a lot of news coming out of California. My stance has always been that state by state, different jurisdictions are going to come down in different ways. Some of them, particularly the states that have legalized iCasino, they are going to likely push out against the sweepstakes industry and look to ban it. I think that there are some states that will hopefully look to regulate it in some ways and capture some of the tax revenue. And there's been talk of maybe creating some sort of licensing structure. I think the reality is that sweepstakes has reached a point where it's reached escape velocity, I would say, where it's too big to go away overnight. I don't think the sweeps industry is going anywhere anytime soon. I think, again, there's going to be an evolution in different states and how they treat it. But there are too many organizations that have reached this point of becoming real, legitimate, serious companies that it's not going to just disappear overnight. I think like the best case scenario, what a lot of people in the industry are hoping, is that this sweeps wave will help drive more states to regulate online casino. I think that would be the best outcome. But we are seeing some of our sweeps clients start to look for strategies of diversification and pivoting. And, I think it depends what the business model is. I think it depends who your customers are, which will determine like what is the best pivot strategy. And when I say pivot, this could also mean just diversification. We have some sweepstakes clients that are also rolling out crypto casinos now. Right. So they're kind of spreading out their business model to not just be solely focused on sweepstakes. There are some brands that I think are very well positioned to just go into social gaming. And there's plenty of businesses that are, thriving and sustainable long term just in the social gaming space. If you're a sportsbook casino, if you're a sportsbook operator that's operating under the sweepstakes model, does DFS make sense as a pivot? And obviously we have prediction markets looming in the background of all of this. So we are starting to have more and more conversations with our clients about what does this next phase look like? I don't think the sweepstakes model is going anywhere anytime soon. I think we're just reached that point where there's too much revenue coming in where, it's not going to just evaporate, but we will start to see more and more companies look to shift their strategy to just diversify and look to add more business models so that they're more spreading out the risk.
Yeah, absolutely. It's been a really interesting storyline to follow over the last 12 months or so, and I'm sure that we will continue to do so as more states look to either intervene or operators look to pivot as well. Jeff, thank you very much for your time. I've really enjoyed chatting to you once again. And listeners, please do remember that Optimove does have an exclusive sweepstake industry breakfast at G2E. So please do get involved with that if you can. We'll have More details in the description. But for now, thank you very much for listening to today's episode of iGaming Daily, and come back tomorrow for another episode where we cover all the latest global gambling news.
Thank you for listening to today's iGaming Daily podcast, supported by Optimove, the #1 CRM marketing solution for the iGaming market. If you want to find out more about some of the subjects raised today, feel free to explore any of the sites in the SBC News Network or check out the latest edition of the SBC Leaders magazine. Happy reading.